All right, everyone. Buddy Carter, a member of Congress, has introduced the Mom Donnie Act, and this will be, I believe, optioned actually today. It's going to be introduced, and we'll see if, it actually gets considered at all. I would suspect that Republicans would want to pass this particular bill. This would strip federal funding from New York City so long as Mom Donnie is the mayor of New York City. Now, do I agree with the principle and the premise? Yes, absolutely. Do I think that it could potentially actually pass? Yeah, there's a possibility that it could, and it's ultimately a good idea, which is why the GOP may not take up the actual idea. Here's what would happen if you were to actually pass it. A federal court would immediately step in and injunct it and say this is unconstitutional and block it. Because, I mean, for two reasons. Number one, because some of that funding is obligatory. Number two, because it seeks to convert non-obligatory funding, which would be stripped, obligatory funding to be non-obligatory, which means you'd effectively, over time you'd strip all funding as otherwise not allocated. But the problem is that it would be conceived of as unlawful. And the courts, as we've seen, they don't even really need a premise to declare something unlawful. We saw on several occasions, like with the persecution of Donald Trump in the cases against him, there were a couple of instances, I believe Engeron was involved in one of them, but I can't remember which one it was because there were so many cases. In some cases, no explanatory law is even given. No actual rationale is given for effectively what amounts to a unilateral autocratic style decision from the bench, which seeks to convert the judiciary into all three forms of government at the same time. Normally, judges step in, there's a constitutional complaint, and they weigh in on things like that. Normally, there's some sort of precedent for it. Normally, there's some sort of urgency to it. But with the Mamdani Act, they're not going to be able to argue these at all. It is quite clear that New York City should not be getting federal funding if the mayor is going to engage in the kind of behavior that he intends to engage in. That is a good idea, but it would be ruled unconstitutional. They'd make up some phony baloney reason for it, and they'd smack it down. In the end, it's doomed to fail. So it's like good ideas and intentions, but there's no way to really actually get it through. It would probably require a significant overhaul of law. There would be protracted litigation over it. It would probably come from a blue court, one where the judge was appointed by Biden or Obama, probably. Although some of the Bush justices haven't been totally reliable either, which is not a huge surprise to me, although it comes as a surprise to Republican partisans. Pro tip, not everyone with an R after their name has your principles. Same is true on the other side of the aisle, by the way, too. Not everyone with a D after their name is a dedicated liberal and or leftist and or socialist and or, like Mamdani, is an outright communist. And don't get me started on on the attempt to redefine what socialism is. Like now that moron from the Jacobin is trying to develop the concept of market socialism. That seems like a little bit of a misnomer, but we'll get past that for now. We can always discuss that, insanity later. So the act, as I'm reading it, it looks good. It looks like a good idea. New York City is currently being held hostage by communists. So why should the taxpayers of the United States, which over and over again, generation after generation, have rejected socialism, why should any money that I contribute to taxes be sent to a city that's now being run by someone who is literally endorsing a political ideology that can keep you from immigrating, by the way, to the United States? Technically speaking, communists aren't even allowed to immigrate to the country. Doesn't seem to stop them. I don't think that the question is really, I mean, what are you going to say? Yeah, I'm a communist. And so, you don't get into the country. So you'll just lie and say, no, no, I'm not a communist. Yeah, there was a time that I was part of the Communist Party of, Uzbekistan or something like, but, I renounced my citizenship. I mean, I renounced my communism. I was never really a believer in that stuff. And by the way, the documentation of me having belonged to it is, I burned it in the waste paper basket. That's sort of how you get around it. So the act is a good idea, but one that the courts, we've seen the judicial activism now over time for years. They're not going to allow it. At least one federal court would immediately injunct. Say, well, no, not only because they've been telling the Trump administration this, by the way, over and over now for months. For some reason, apparently, laws duly incepted by Congress that were never challenged before all of a sudden are up in the air. Funding that in some cases is discretionary can be forced to be spent on things, even if the money's not there, oddly enough, simply because a judge says so. So now apparently it's no longer the House of Representatives that controls the purse strings. It's now the judicial branch. This is a bizarre overreach, one that we have not really seen before. It's been mostly absent from judicial decision making. In courts, normally they exhibit some degree of solemnity and decorum, and the judicial system is usually very, very slow, by the way. Just go to court sometime and you'll see. Don't do that, by the way. Unless you're a lawyer or something like that. Then you have no choice. But the judicial system normally acts fairly slowly. With this, it would be a same-day injunction. It would be they would already have prepared the paperwork probably at one or more federal courts to immediately cock block the bill and say no, no, no. The Trump administration has no choice but to send money to New York City because I don't know, discrimination or something like that. The correct response by the Trump administration then would be to free up a shit ton of funding for rural areas and stuff like that and say, no, I'm going to send a bunch of discretionary spending there. And by the way, I'm going to make sure that a federal judge already has the paperwork inked to make sure that it's upheld so that nobody can countermand it. That would be the appropriate response. I do not believe in funding New York City at the federal level, though. I don't want my taxpayer money going to promote communism. It's seems a little bit odd, considering only a few decades ago we were talking about how the commies wanted to blow everyone up and stuff like that. That's about all. Peace out.